So far in diagramming sentences, we've looked at the patterns subject and verb, there we go, and object. And in this lesson, I'd like to say a little bit more about the verb, because often the verb is not just one word, often it's actually an entire phrase. You can see that from our chart here, which shows the 12 different tenses in English. And to help make some sense of this, at the very top we have the tense, so past, present, and future. And on the side here, we have what's called the aspect. The aspect, we have simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous. I wouldn't try to memorize them all at this point. The main thing is just to be aware of all these different verb tenses. And if you're a native speaker of English, I think you would understand these things intuitively. Now, we can combine these things then, right, tense and aspect, to form these different tenses. And what you see here is two different examples. So we have the verb to walk, we have the verb to sing, and the first one, walk, is a regular verb, and the second one is an irregular verb. So if you look, for instance, at I sing and I sang, you can see that the vowel changes as opposed to this more regular pattern of just adding ed at the end. Okay, so those are our verb tenses. Now, if we diagram an example here, so let's diagram something, and we'll just draw our line. Right, there we go. All right, so we draw our line, and now we're going to write our sentence. Let's say I, and then we say something like have been walking, have been walking. You can see that we have quite a long verb phrase here, all on the same line. And we're able to do that because of these two helping verbs. So helping verbs are verbs that help the main verb to do its job. So these are called helping verbs. And these helping verbs, together with the main verb, allow us to indicate a bunch of different things. So we've already talked about tense, right? Present, past, future. We can also talk about mood. And mood is like the tone of the verb. This allows us to make the verb indicative, which is a regular sentence, imperative, which is a command, or subjunctive, which is a bit more hypothetical. Then we can talk about the voice of the verb. So the voice of the verb, is the verb active or is it passive? Is the action happening to the subject or is the subject doing the action? So helping verbs then are really important, and it's good to know what to look for here so that you can put the entire verb phrase on one line. There's also a particular kind of helping verb that we call the modal auxiliary. It's quite the mouthful. Auxiliary just means helping, but these indicate things like possibility and necessity. Examples are could and ought and shall and so on. So they really allow us to add extra nuance to our verb phrase to indicate what we're really trying to say. There are also some helping verbs that have many different forms, and examples are be, do, and have. We call these helping verbs strongly inflected. So you can see that they have quite a few different forms, and it's good to be aware again of the differences. Few final things to think about as we wrap up this lesson. So at this point, we've mostly seen that the order of the verb phrase is helping verbs come first, and then we get the main verb. There are a few things to watch out for. So often you're going to find words interspersed. You might say, for instance, I have not been walking. Not is an adverb. We haven't got to adverbs yet. So sometimes you're going to see some words in between the verb phrase, and sometimes you're also going to see a different order, for instance, with questions. Okay, so if we say something like, does he believe? Does he believe? You can see that does believe is the verb phrase, but the subject here comes in between. And if you were to diagram this, you would have to put he, right, to the left of the line, and does believe has to be brought together again in order to indicate that this is one particular unit. Now, we haven't got to questions, and we'll talk about diagramming questions in a future lesson, but it's just good to be aware that the verb phrase isn't always entirely together. Sometimes you have to kind of reconstruct it. All right, so that's mostly it for verb tenses and helping verbs. Do remember, though, that helping verbs can sometimes be verbs by themselves. If I say, for instance, I have a toothache, have, which is often a helping verb, is its own main verb here. So just something to watch out for. All right, that's it for verb tenses and helping verbs.